The following story has been brought to you by StoriesToInspire.org.
You know what type of chinuch and education it is for your children to realize the importance of caring about another person? Just a couple of days ago, I was in a city, and I met a little boy who was 11, and the father told me when the boy walked away, "I want to tell you something my 11-year-old just did." He said, "A few weeks ago we had PTA. When the parents go to the classroom, they see the desk of the child, how the child's progressing, and speaks to the teachers. As the parents, the father told this to me, as we were leaving to PTA for the evening, that 11-year-old every 11-year-old you just met came over and said to my wife, 'Ima, I have to tell you something. When you get to my desk, there's a note there. I wrote you guys a note because I wanted you to know how I'm doing, and I wanted to say hello. I put it on my desk. But on the outside of the note, I just wrote, Dear Abba. But Ima, it's for you too. Really, really, it is.' An 11-year-old says. But I didn't write it. It just says, Dear Abba. I'll tell you why. One of my classmates a few months ago lost his mother. And I didn't want him to walk by and see a note that I wrote to Dear Abba and Ima. I didn't want to cause him that pain. So I want you to know the note's really for you. I just didn't write it so he shouldn't feel the pain." That was the boy I just met, and the father told me this story. You see, children know what it means to remove darkness. Children understand you have to be mechazik another person. I remember a few years ago somebody coming over to me in Miami Beach and telling me the following story about their child who was 12. You know, before school, a mother might take a child to get new clothing for the new year, for the new school year, for yeshiva. The 12-year-old shops, comes, and the mother looks and says, "Nothing that you picked out, the pants, the shirt, it's not your size." "Yeah, I want to explain," the 12-year-old says. As the school year was ending, I noticed that there was a boy in our class who just always seemed to have ill-fitting clothing. Patches, different things that didn't fit well. You know what this boy did? He went to the principal and he asked the menahel to somehow find out the size of that boy, shirt, pants, everything, shoes. And he turns to his mother at the checkout and says, "If it's okay with you, I know you're only buying one of everything. Let it be for him. I found out all his sizes. These are it, instead of for me. I hope that's okay with you." You see, a boy knows what it means to remove choshech. Allow me to tell you that the boy happens to be a great-grandson of Rav Moshe Feinstein. You could well imagine that being mechazik a person and caring for a 12-year-old, he understood from his family, and they understood it from Rav Moshe. A few years ago, a doctor from New Jersey came over to me and he said, "Let me tell you a story about Rav Moshe. My mother has a heart condition, so every year she would call Reb Moshe before Pesach, and Erev Pesach, and she would ask Reb Moshe if the medicine could be taken on Pesach. And Reb Moshe would patiently explain to her, the heart medicine, you could take it, it's not a problem, it's not chametz. He would speak to her and wish her a good yontif. The patience of Reb Moshe was legend. The doctor tells me my mother called Reb Moshe Erev Pesach every year for a bit more than 20 years. Imagine getting the same phone call on Erev Pesach for over 20 years. And one year he said my mother was elderly, she was a bit forgetful, and that Erev Pesach she forgot to call Reb Moshe. 2 hours before Yontif was going to begin, the phone rings in her house. And she picks up. And on the other end, the voice says, "This is Moshe Feinstein calling. I didn't hear from you today, and I was concerned. Are you okay? And I want to remind you that the medicine is okay. It's fine for Pesach. It's not chometz." And he wished her a good Yontif. Do we people get that story? You know what Erev Pesach means to be busy? People say that a Rav on Erev Pesach has pressure more than the near nuclear explosion 30 years ago on 3 Mile Island. It's more pressure. And for Reb Moshe? But Reb Moshe had one thing on his mind. I'll tell you something, and maybe I shouldn't say it. But if I would come home and my wife would tell me that there's a phone call I don't have to make, that's like a big simcha. That's like a day you wouldn't say tachnun. That's great. Like I mean a Monday, Thursday tachnun. Really, I don't have to make the call? Reb Moshe had one thing on his mind. There's a lady who can't be alone. It can't be chayshak. I have to be mechazaker. And he calls her. So new? Is it any surprise that his Ur Einikel, his great-grandson, shops for another classmate? And so maybe the explanation of Hashata Hacha, how we are still here, is because we're holding on to each other's coattails.
Enjoyed this story? Come again. Bring a friend. StoriesToInspire.org